Before we begin, take 1 second. Hit subscribe, press like, and write your thoughts in the comments, because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you have been told. This is not noise. This is not rumor. This is not politics as usual. This is about war. And tonight, we go straight to it. The United States and Israel are pushing the world toward a direct war with Iran. And the reason being sold to the public is simple, dramatic, and terrifying. They say Iran is on the edge of building a nuclear weapon. They say the threat is immediate. They say action cannot wait. But here's the truth. The story being told to the American people is built on fear. It is built on half-facts. And it is built on claims that intelligence experts themselves do not fully support. President Donald Trump, now back in the White House, has made Iran the center of his foreign policy once again. He has repeated the same warning again and again. Iran cannot be allowed to get the bomb. He says the danger is clear. He says the time for patience is over. Israel's leadership is saying the same thing. They claim Iran is weeks away from a nuclear weapon. Weeks. Not years. Not decades. Weeks. But when you look at the official intelligence reports, the language is very different. American intelligence agencies have publicly stated that while Iran has enriched uranium, there is no confirmed evidence that Iran has made a final decision to build a nuclear weapon. That is not the same thing. Enriching uranium is not the same as building a bomb. Intent matters. Proof matters. Facts matter. This is not the first time fear has been used to justify war in the Middle East. Many Americans remember Iraq, weapons of mass destruction. Urgent danger. Claims that later collapsed under scrutiny. And now, once again, the drumbeat is growing louder. Airstrikes are being discussed openly. Military assets are moving. Regional tensions are exploding. Oil prices are reacting. Markets are nervous. But here's what is not being said loudly enough. Iran is a powerful country with deep regional influence. It has allies. It has missiles. It has the ability to strike back. A war with Iran would not be small. They would not be quick. And it would not be contained. This is not just about one country. This is about the entire Middle East. This is about global energy. This is about American troops already stationed in the region. And this is about the risk of pulling the United States into another long and costly conflict. The public deserves facts, not fear. And that is where this story truly begins. Let us break down this central claim. The main argument being used to justify this rising confrontation is that Iran is racing toward a nuclear bomb, that the clock is ticking, that if action is not taken now, it will be too late. But intelligence assessments tell a more careful story. Yes, Iran has increased uranium enrichment levels. That is real. After the United States withdrew from the nuclear deal years ago, Iran gradually stepped back from its own limits under that agreement. That agreement was known as the Iran nuclear deal. It placed strict limits on enrichment. It required inspections. It created transparency. When the United States left that deal, those restrictions began to fall apart. And here's a key point many people miss. International inspectors still monitor parts of Iran's nuclear program. Reports from global nuclear watchdogs have raised concerns about enrichment levels. But those same reports have not confirmed that Iran is building a bomb. Enrichment can be reversed. Weaponization is a different step entirely. And American intelligence officials have repeatedly said, now let us talk about timing. Why now? Why is the pressure building at this moment? Inside Israel, political tensions are high. Security threats from multiple fronts remain active. Iran's influence through regional groups has grown over the years. These groups operate in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and beyond. Israel sees a tightening circle. At the same time, President Trump faces intense political battles at home. Strong foreign policy moves often shift headlines. They create unity among supporters. They frame leadership as decisive and tough. History shows that international crises can reshape domestic politics. That is not a conspiracy. That is a pattern seen across decades and administrations. Meanwhile, Iran itself is under heavy economic. Let us talk about intelligence. When officials speak publicly, they often use careful words. They say assessments. They say monitoring. They say capability. those words matter. Capability is not the same as intent. Many countries have the scientific knowledge to build advanced weapons. That does not mean they have chosen to do so. Intelligence agencies operate on evidence. Intercepted communications, satellite imagery, human sources, technical data. If there were clear proof that Iran had ordered full weaponization, that information would likely be presented in strong terms. Instead, what has been heard are warnings about enrichment levels and stockpiles. Serious concerns, yes, but not confirmed weapon assembly. There is also the question of diplomacy. Diplomatic channels have narrowed, but they are not fully closed. European nations continue discussions. Back-channel talks have occurred in the past. Negotiation is slow. There is also the legal question. Under international law, preemptive strikes are heavily debated. Nations argue self-defense, but self-defense requires clear and immediate threat. Imminence matters. If Iran is not actively building a bomb, then the justification becomes harder to defend globally. Allies in Europe are cautious. Some support strong pressure. Others urge restraint and renewed negotiations. Russia and China are watching closely. They have relationships with Iran. The conflict could shift global alliances in unpredictable ways. This is no longer just a Middle Eastern issue. It is a global power equation. And when global powers move pieces on a board like this, miscalculation becomes dangerous. One missile can trigger retaliation. One retaliation can trigger escalation. Now, let us confront the core claim head-on. Is the US-Israeli path toward confrontation based on lies? The word lies is powerful. It suggests deliberate deception. It suggests leaders knowingly presenting falsehoods. What can be said with certainty is this. The public narrative often sounds more absolute than the intelligence behind it. Statements like, Iran is about to have a bomb, create urgency. They create fear. They prepare people emotionally for military action. But intelligence summaries use softer terms. They describe potential. They describe risk. They describe concern. There's a gap between those two messages. And in that gap, policy is formed. President Trump argues that waiting is dangerous, that even the chance of a nuclear-armed Iran is unacceptable. Israel echoes that belief with deep historical fear guiding its stance. But critics argue that exaggerating immediacy removes space for diplomacy. They warn that repeating worst-case scenarios as present reality pushes nations into conflict unnecessarily. The truth may not be simple. Iran has advanced its nuclear capability beyond earlier limits. That is real. But now the conversation turns to consequences. If the United States or Israel launches direct strikes on Iran, the first hours would feel dramatic. The headlines would explode. Officials would speak of precision. They would promise control. They would promise limited objectives. But wars rarely stay limited. Iran has made it clear for years that it will not absorb an attack quietly. It has missiles that can reach Israeli cities. It has the ability to strike American bases across the region. It has allies positioned close to Israel's borders. Retaliation would not be a question of if. It would be a question of how hard. Oil routes through the Strait of Hormuz could be disrupted. Nearly a fifth of the world's oil passes through that narrow stretch of water. Even a temporary closure would send prices soaring. Gas prices in the United States would climb fast. Markets would shift. Now let us address another layer. Information. In times of rising conflict, narratives move quickly. Strong statements are repeated. Urgency is emphasized. Doubt is framed as weakness. But democracy requires questioning. When leaders say intelligence proves imminent danger, the public has the right to see evidence. When officials claim there is no alternative, alternatives must still be examined. The memory of past wars lingers. In Iraq, certainty was presented. The threat was described as immediate. Later investigations revealed flawed intelligence and exaggerated claims. No nation wants to repeat that mistake. President Trump insists this is different. He argues that his administration has clearer insight and stronger resolve. He says, now consider the global picture. Russia watches closely. China watches closely. Both nations have economic and strategic ties with Iran. A US-Israeli strike could shift alliances overnight. If Iran feels cornered, It may deepen partnerships with powers that challenge American influence. That reshapes the world balance. Europe stands divided. Some leaders call for restraint and renewed negotiation. Others quietly support strong deterrence, but fear open war. Global markets are already reacting to tension alone. Investors do not wait for explosions. They react to risk. And here is a critical point. A war with Iran would not only be about nuclear facilities, it would touch cyber. There is also the human reality inside Iran. The Iranian people are not a single voice. There are reformers, there are hardliners, there are young citizens who want greater freedom, there are leaders who resist outside pressure fiercely. An external attack could reshape that internal balance overnight. History shows that foreign strikes often strengthen nationalist feeling. Even critics of their own government may rally when the nation is attacked. So if the goal is long-term moderation inside Iran, military action could produce the opposite result. Sanctions have already created hardship. Inflation and unemployment have burdened ordinary families. Yet the leadership remains in power. Pressure alone has limits. That is why some analysts argue that smart diplomacy, combined with strict inspections, may reduce risk more effectively than airstrikes. Others reject that view entirely. They say Iran has used diplomacy as delay while advancing capability. So where does this leave the world tonight? At a crossroads. President Trump stands firm in his warning. Israel stands firm in its alarm. Iran stands defiant under pressure. The air is thick with threat, but truth requires clarity. Iran has expanded uranium enrichment beyond earlier limits. That is fact. There is not publicly confirmed evidence that Iran has completed or ordered the final steps to build a nuclear weapon. That is also fact. Between those two truths lies the debate shaping the future. Is immediate military action the only solution? Or is the urgency being amplified beyond the intelligence to justify a broader strategic objective? The American people must demand evidence, not emotion, because once a war begins, there are no easy exits. Lives will change, the economies will shift, alliances will realign, and history will judge whether decisions were made on verified truth or amplified fear. This is not about choosing sides blindly. This is about demanding facts before conflict. The stakes are enormous. The moment is fragile, and the world is watching.